when we talk about life insurance, they kind of close down. They really don't want to talk about life insurance. So sometimes you have to kind of sneak it in there a little bit. Let me start by, when it comes time to VUL, I think you got to look at it a little bit differently. You got to look at, I got a few notes here. You got to convey the message to the clients that VUL is an asset class in itself. Okay, you got to kind of make sure that they know that, it can be utilized as a respective asset class. Okay, make sure that they recognize that VUL is a part of a permanent life insurance policy. You don't have to hide it. But I think the most important part of it about it is that, in its simplest form, what is VUL? Its absolute simplest layman's form, VUL is nothing more than term insurance with some mutual fund wrappers. Or said another way, some administrative and mortality costs associated with it and some separate accounts. But really, what is it? That's all it is. But because it has that wrapper of term insurance around that mutual fund, what does it say it can do? Because it has that wrapper of term insurance around mutual funds, what makes it different than most mutual funds?
Gross tax deferred.
Gross tax deferred, with the loans, you can take it out and net wash loans after, 10 years is it? So, that's all it is. So make sure that you got to explain things to prospects as they will understand it. Do they understand a mutual fund? Do they understand term insurance? Do they recognize when they put those two things together, it has some distinct and unique advantages? Okay? So what you got to learn how to do, though, is put it off and, introduce what a VUL is in a very kind of cavalier way. And my favorite way is to talk about the characteristics of a great investment. But that's just one way to do it. You've seen it before. Let's just blow through it real quick. But when you're sitting down with somebody, and not all appointments can be fact finder appointments. Okay, it'd be great to be able to, every single appointment that you go in there to be able to gather all the facts, put together a financial plan. Sometimes those things don't happen. Sometimes you got 3, 4, 5 minutes, okay, to kind of put your best foot forward and show them something that maybe they haven't seen before. Okay, and what I'm going to show you is some things that you can use on a piece of paper all the time to kind of go through there and to kind of, make sure that they understand the magic of what VUL can do. Okay? So let's just take somebody through a 2-minute, 3-minute, 4-minute conversation about the characteristics of a great investment. Right, Jonathan? Together, let's agree, if you were to have a great investment, and you agree that it's a great investment, do you think you'd be willing to put in, I don't know, $1,000 a month?
Why not?
Well then, 500 for sure, right?
Sure.
So start with something like that. Kind of say, if I could show you, and you'll be the sole judge of that, one of the best characteristics of an investment, what do you think you can sock away? This is not during this might be during a fact finder, but this is not a traditional gather the facts, do a financial plan appointment. This is just throwing something out there to give them something to sink their teeth into. So you got to say, well, obviously, number one, and you got to write it on a whole sheet of paper, right? You got to use a whole sheet of paper to say, number one, if it's going to be considered a great investment, we got to have a good rate of return, right? In order to get a good rate of return, we need what?
Multiple investment options.
We need multiple. I know you can do this. Multiple investment options. Okay. Now you got to show them a little bit about what you're talking about. What I mean by that is multiple investment options is certain things are better in certain respective years than others. Okay, are you familiar with the terminology asset classes? You should articulate what an asset class is. Give them examples of an asset class. You should pull out right now a Callan chart and show them, okay, asset classes, and show them how in or let's use 2010, what was the best performing asset class? What was it? I think that's what it was, right? Isn't that what it was? Let's see. In 2011, okay, as far as stock asset classes, which was the best performing asset class? Real estate investment trust. Okay. What was the worst performing asset class in the year before, 2010?
Real estate.
real estate investment trust. So you gotta say that. So you don't want to have all your eggs in that one respective basket. Are you familiar with, okay, asset classes? Okay, because it's my contention that if you're going to have an investment that has a great rate of return, you got to have one that has multiple investment choices, so you can take opportunities, okay, and diversify and maybe capture what asset classes based on market conditions are performing the best. And then you got to make sure you educate them, and I suggest you use some sort of a tool like this. Okay, what's the next one? In order to get a good rate of return, you got to have multiple investment choices. Okay, in order to get with that, what else do we want to tell them?
Flexibility.
That's important, right? Flexibility. Jonathan, you had mentioned that you want to save somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000. You said 500. Wouldn't it be nice though if you had a good month? Okay, that maybe you could save 1,000 or 1,500, or if in a bad month, wouldn't it be great to maybe only know that you only had to put in nothing? If that be the case, you could skip it, or maybe $200 or $300. Isn't that something that would be important to you? So far we're trying to get you a good rate of return. We're going to do that through multiple investment choices. We want to be able to provide you with some degree of flexibility, okay, of contributions. What else would you consider the characteristics of a great investment?
Tax deferral.
Okay, tax deferral. And you want to go in this order, right? There's a reason why I want to go in that order versus the other order. Tax deferral. Are you familiar with the power of tax deferral? You got to show them an example of tax deferral. Whether you show them something like this here, or whether you show them the Rule of 72. I like interactive stuff, so I would tend to show them the Rule of 72 right now. Okay, and you can use the Rule of 72 in 1,000 different ways, and if you've seen this 1,000 times and you still don't know how to do it, you got to do it. Okay, the Rule of 72 is what? What is it?
How money doubles.
It will demonstrate to you how fast your money will double. Whether it's using different interest rates or whether you're using the same interest rates and maybe paying taxes on it. Okay? But that's the power of tax deferral. Okay? It's something that will, kind of compound for you. And if it grows tax deferred, okay, there's going to be a lot more money at the end than it is if it's going to be taxable. Here's an example of $10,000 invested, right? You've all seen this. $10,000 invested. Okay? Compounding over 30 years at 8%. Assuming a 31% tax bracket. At the end of that 30 years, on the taxable one, where every year we got to take some money out and pay taxes, it's worth $50,124. On the tax deferred one, it's worth $100,627. And use your financial calculator, it comes out. I've checked it many times before. Okay, and then assuming you paid 31% in taxes then, you're still going to net out $69,000. So I'm not sure what you want, but what is better, do you think? $50,000 or $69,000? So that's the magic of tax deferral. Okay? If we take that same, let's use 12% interest, and let's pay taxes on it, assuming a 33% tax bracket, what are we really netting out over here? 8%. Okay? Over here, okay, if it's tax deferred, we're actually going to get 12%. If I started these investments as a 45-year-old and I have $100,000 over here, and I have $100,000 over here, under the assumption of the Rule of 72, okay, if I take 72 and divide it by 8, how many years will it take my money to double? 9 years, right? So, by the time I hit 54, that 100,000 will be 200,000. 9 years later, right? Because that's how fast it takes. 72 divided by 8 is 9 years, right? And now it's going to be 400,000. Over here, where it grows tax deferred, and I don't have to chip away and pay taxes on it every year, okay? It's going to double in how many years? 72, Mr. Prospect, divided by 12 says it's going to double in 6 years. Before I go any further, would you rather have your money double in 6 years or 9 years?
6.
Okay, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to shake their head and say, yeah, okay, I get it. They're going to kind of be a little upset that you're taking them through this thing here a little bit. So 100,000 turns into 200,000 at what age? 200,000 turns into 400,000 at what age? And 400,000 turns into 800,000 at what age? 63. So at the age of 63, would you rather have something that is worth 800,000 or 400,000? Even if you had to pay the taxes now on the gain, here's what you got. You got 800,000. Take away the 100,000 because that's your basis, that's your principal. You don't have to pay taxes on your basis, right? Your gain is 700,000. Even if I assume the tax bracket's gone up from what I said over here was 33%, heck, let's just say it went to 50%. Is there a possibility that tax rates moving forward are going to increase? So let's say they do increase, even to 50%. That means of the 700, you're going to net out how much? 350 plus your 100 is how much? 450. So what would you rather have, 450 or 400,000? Okay, so take them through that. It's so simple, but if they don't get tax deferral, and they don't get it, when you say, do you understand what tax deferral is, everyone's going to say to you, yes. But what do they think tax deferral really is?
Tax deductible.
It's something that's tax deductible. You got to give them the impact of tax deferral. You got to explain to them it's nothing more than, kind of a snowball effect of their money picking up and not having to throw the excess off every year as it rolls down that hill. So far we got an investment potential that has a good rate of return. In order to get a good rate of return, we got to have multiple investment choices that cover all respective asset classes so that we can take advantage of what's sort of working in the marketplace, okay? We want to have flexibility of contributions. We want to have something that grows tax deferred. Unfortunately, okay, especially if you're doing this for a young person, unfortunately, most things that grow tax deferred, okay, don't give you what? Access or liquidity, okay? I.e., such as a 401k, an IRA, things like that. What if we can give you all this and give you liquidity? Okay? And last but not least, and I'm not saying I can do this, but what if I can give you a good potential rate of return because it has asset classes, flexibility contributions, something that grows tax deferred, which clearly you want, liquidity, but also when you take it out, what if you could take it out and not pay any taxes? Would that not be the characteristics of one of the great investments you've ever seen? In order to get that, okay, there's not a lot of places you can do that. Okay? So right now you got to decide where you want to go depending on where the client is. You can stay right with a yellow pad or something, or you can take them through the 2, 3, 4. Let's assume you're not going to pick up the 2, 3, 4 piece for a minute. Okay? You just want to stay with a yellow pad. Okay, just go through some examples. So, with an IRA, okay, just go just like this. With an IRA, could you potentially get a good rate of return? Certainly you can. You can get it because most IRAs are going to give you multiple investment choices. Can you have a certain degree of flexibility of your contributions? Yeah. I mean, you're limited in how much you can put in. Does it grow tax deferred?
It could.
Okay, it should and it could, right? Okay, does it come out, is it liquid?
No.
When you take it out, do you have to pay taxes? Okay, so that goes for pretty much any, qualified money, you could say. Something like that. Okay? Let's compare it to a Roth. Could you get a good rate of return?
Yeah.
Multiple investment choices? Flexibility contributions? Should be able to. Tax deferred growth? Okay. Liquidity? How about taxes when it comes out?
No.
Yeah, you can not pay taxes when it comes out, right? Okay. A Roth is a very good, viable, kind of a investment vehicle because you can get a lot of these things for it. But, okay, it doesn't have the liquidity. And one of the things you're going to find, and now, of course, you got to make sure that you know some of these rules, but what are the limitations of a Roth?
Well, there are low contribution limits based on AGI.
Right, there's contribution limits, okay? So, and we can throw that in here if we wanted to, too, under the characteristics of a great investment, that don't have contribution limits. But I want to talk about something that we call an FPVLI. That's the industry terminology for basically, VUL, flexible premium variable, life insurance. Okay, where you could get a good rate of return, you could get multiple investment choices, you can get flexibility of your contributions, you can get tax deferred growth, you can get liquidity, and when you take it out, you can take it out without paying any taxes. But there is a catch. What's the catch? You have to be able to qualify. Is that how you like to close it sometimes? Right? There's a couple of catches. What are the two primary catches to owning this great vehicle?
You need to be able to fund it properly, and you need to be able to not qualify.
Okay? And what I would say is you got to qualify for it because it has a component of insurance. Okay? And the other catch is there are certain limitations as to how much money you can put into this. What do they usually say there? What are the limitations? So they still don't understand this product yet, but you kind of introduced it. So how can you explain this product now to them? What vehicles do we have? What tools, or what kind of exercise can you do on the board? My favorite one is one that you've seen me do. Let's compare it to an IRA. Let's compare contributions into an IRA, okay? If we contribute, $10,000 a year into an IRA, okay? We'll cover the tax deduction momentarily, okay? And we put this in over 20 years. How much is invested? $200,000. Assuming it earns X interest rate, I'm just going to create it so I can do easy math. Okay, I'm going to use it as a ratio of 3 to 1, so to speak. So I'm going to say it's going to grow to what? 600,000. If I take that out now, and I'm assuming a 33% tax bracket, how much am I netting out? 400,000. If they don't know the answer to that question, slow down and go over it. Because if they don't get that, if they don't understand it, they're not going to buy it. Sometimes we just go real fast here because obviously you guys get it. But if they don't answer the questions, they don't get it. You lost them somewhere, which is okay. And if they don't get it, I guarantee you they're not going to buy it. Right? Over here, something a little bit different. Okay? This is the VUL. Over here, associated with this $10,000, we're going to give you a $500,000. Let's get that out of the way. We're going to give you a $500,000 death benefit. What I want to explain to you is that because you have this death benefit, it's going to allow you to have some of these things that maybe that some investments would not allow you to have. Such as what? The IRA doesn't have liquidity until when? And when you take it out, you got to pay taxes. Because you have this little umbrella of insurance, and because you're willing to play by the IRS rules, which primarily govern what? How much money you can put into this. And as long as you don't put too much into it, you can get what we're going to talk about here. All right, so now let's say you put that same $10,000 in. Does that cost something to have $500,000 of death benefit, or do you think it's for free? It costs something. And the way I want you to look at that is like I introduced to you, when I first started this. It's basically term insurance with mutual funds, okay? So the insurance associated with this over the course of 20, 30 years, okay, roughly comes out to somewhere between, depending on how you fund it, as we say, 8 and 12% of the contributions. I want to split the difference for a minute and tell you that if you're putting in $10,000 a year into a $500,000 contract under this example, roughly every year, the mortality and administrative costs are going to average about $1,000. That's going to be the charges associated with you owning this, right? So that means really you're not putting in $10,000, you're putting in $9,000. And this is a powerful statement now you want to say. What I'm telling you right now is that every dollar above and beyond that mortality and administrative expenses associated with owning this are going to go into a pure portfolio of mutual funds that we call a separate account. And because it does have that protection or that portfolio or that umbrella on it, those separate accounts, okay, ideally can give you a good rate of return because it's got asset classes covered, okay? You certainly will have flexibility contribution, but it's going to grow tax deferred because it has that umbrella on it. It's going to be liquid because it's not a qualified plan because, you know, Internal Revenue Code says it can be liquid, and you can take it out without paying any taxes. So now, all we're going to do is compare it. So now if you invest this for 20 years, if you invest $90,000 for 20 years, I'm sorry, $9,000 for 20 years, how much have you invested?
180.
180 is the part I always say it's critically important, okay? If this 200,000 can earn X because you've got multiple asset classes, and I'm not saying you've got the exact same investments, but I'm saying you've got the exact same asset classes. If this 200 can earn X, and we factored in the costs associated with the insurance, is there any reason why this 180 can't earn X? If they don't get that, you better slow down. Right? You got to make sure they get that point. That's the biggest point right there. I'm basically saying, okay, that everything above and beyond the mortality and administrative charges associated with this life insurance can earn the same investment results as anything else, assuming you have, you know, good asset classes to choose from. So if 200,000 can earn X, then 180,000 can earn X. And if that 180,000 earns X, what's this worth? 540. And if you take out, I don't know if you know this or not, Mr. Prospect, but you can take out what percentage of this without paying any taxes on it? Roughly. 90%. So basically I'm telling you can take out how much of that money? You know, say roughly 50,000. I'm sorry, you can keep in roughly 50,000. How much can you take out? 490. You know, 490-ish, something like that. So let's compare what this is here. This is basically giving you a death benefit over here, right? Okay, and allowing you to net out 490,000, and giving you totally liquidity to this all along the way. Where this, okay, you can't handle liquidity. You net out 400,000, and last but not least, which way do you think tax rates might be going moving forward? Up. I mean, right now, officially, the tax rates went up. What, for many people, what was the average that they went up, like 12, 13%? Right, 35 to 39 point something at that end. Okay, if this goes up to 50%, how much are you netting out over here? 300,000. If this goes up to 50%, on this side, how much are you netting out over here? 490 still. It's not affected. Okay? I'm not saying, and you got to be careful because you'll never win this argument until you take, you know, because now you got to take the tax savings into consideration, right? And how would you take the tax savings into consideration? You can say, well, if you're in a 33% tax bracket, you're saving $3,000 a year. I wouldn't do this, but just be, you know, basically under the same concept, $3,000 a year for how many years? 20 years is how much? It's 60,000, and that can earn, right, threefold, assuming that that tax savings invested. So you got to make sure that you say, I am not suggesting to you that you don't do your IRA or your 457 or your 403B and do this. I'm suggesting that maybe you might need this, and this might put you in a better situation than this, or maybe I'm suggesting reduce this a little bit because you need this anyway. You can't go out there and sell overfunded VULs necessarily just on the pure fact that they're a good investment. People buy things for what two reasons do they buy stuff from us?
They understand it.
Well, I understand it.
They like you and they trust you.
Well, that too. Okay, so I'm looking for something. You got, that's all right. What I'm looking for is that they need it or they want it. So I used to say need or greed. Okay, selling this here is what kind of a sale? Liquidity, tax deferred, tax free.
They want
Yeah, that's they want it or they greed it, right? I'm using want and greed, right? That's a want or greed sale. Okay, if you can always show them two reasons as to why they should buy it. So what's the other reason besides they want it or they greed it?
Need it.
They need it. So now that if you can show them, one or two reasons as to why they should have a death benefit, then this is sort of like something that solves all their problems. So some of the tools that you can use to show them that, so you gotta know how to do something like that, and you also should know how to compare this to, okay, I'm not telling, let's rob from Peter to pay Paul, so you should be able to do it like this. Now, let me show you. I'm not gonna do the whole thing again, but you wanna practice it like this. Okay, here we got the $10,000, we go through all the motions, and we netted out, what, 200,000, right? I'm sorry, 400,000. Over here, we went through all the motions, okay, and we netted out 490. What you want to do is say, listen, I'm not telling you to stop doing this and do this, but you know what I am saying? Because you need the death benefit anyway, okay, keep putting in $7,000 into this, and then go through this whole thing again. 7 will be what? 20 years will be 140 times 3, and then see what you net out over there, right? What will that be, real quick? 140, so that'll be 280, 380, 420, less 33%, whatever that is, somewhere around 270, right? 280. And then say, now put in the 3,000 over here. And then add these two things up over here and compare it to this one here. But this has got $250,000 of a death benefit that gets them the death benefit that they need anyway. Because if you just do it sometimes like 10,000 and 10,000, you better be prepared to say, and I'm not suggesting you do that. What I am suggesting you do, though, is maybe take a little from Peter to pay Paul. And then your ace in the hole is to be able to say, plus, okay, you shared with me that you're making $120,000 a year. Under a fair assumption that you're going to get a raise next year, a bonus or whatever, even if you make a 4% increase in your salary next year, how much of an increase is that there?
5,000.
Roughly $5,000, right? You can increase, this 7 back to 10. So basically you can have all this in place for what cost? The cost of not doing your $10,000 contribution this year, but doing it 7, so the cost of $3,000. And from a tax deductible standpoint, you're only going to lose how much in taxes? $1,000 of savings. Then you have the conversation with them, but which way do you think tax rates are going? Up or down? Would you rather pay, would you rather get tax savings today, okay, to take out a lump sum tomorrow and higher taxes, or would you rather kind of take it on the chin today and know that you can get it all out tax-free down the road? So throw that idea at them a little bit, okay, that concept, if you will. So you got to know how to do that. I think that's a real big plus. We'll leave this up. You should know how to go through the 2, 3. This is probably better. Doing it like this here is equally as good as the 2, 3, 4, I think, because you can just use, you can just make up your own 2, 3, 4 right over here and let them kind of participate. You're educating them along the way. But the 2, 3, 4 piece is a great piece to make your same points. Would you agree? Now, it does have the life insurance contract. It does have that little umbrella associated with it, okay? So you got to be able to talk about life insurance. Okay, so some of the other things that you should be very familiar with is, what's this right here? This is your lifetime. Let's talk about, your lifetime. Let's talk about the life insurance timeline. What are some of the reasons why you might need life insurance now? What are some of the reasons why you might need it later? Okay, let's go to the later. Why might you need life insurance at 80? Give me one reason.
It's legacy planning.
Legacy planning? Is that what
I said estate planning, you said legacy.
estate, legacy planning, explain what they, and if they don't know what those things are, talk to them about it. Why might you need life insurance over here?
Income replacement.
Maybe, income replacement, maybe, a self-completing college plan. And all along the way, we can come up with different reasons as to why you might need life insurance. Right? What I'm saying is this: the flexible premium variable life insurance, okay, is a permanent solution, okay, to a permanent problem, okay? This is especially good when they're thinking about buying term insurance, right? If they're thinking about buying term insurance and they're 30 years of age and they're going to buy a 30-year, It ends when they're 60. Do you think, Mr. Prospect, you're ever going to need life insurance past 60? You gotta get them thinking that, okay? That life insurance, term insurance is not a bad alternative, but it's a temporary solution to a permanent problem. And one thing that happens with term insurance, what percentage of term insurance that AXA sold, okay, do they pay claims on?
3%.
Yeah, it's go ahead. Five. It's somewhere around there. It's somewhere between 3 and 5, you know, something like that. Okay, AXA's probably paying claims on their term insurance a little bit more than other people are paying claims on it. Not sure why that is, but you know, but you know, you can buy it, Mr. Prospect, but there's only a 5% chance that it'll be paid out because you're going to expire. You're going to cancel it. It's going to expire when you want it the most. And when do you want your life insurance the most?
The day after you die.
The day after you die. Okay? So you got to make kind of, you know, quick commentary or jokes on stuff like that. The other thing you got to be good at, okay? Need and greed. I think we can convince people all day long that the cash value associated in the tax-deferred, tax-free withdrawals associated with this is a pretty good alternative. Okay? The other thing we got to do is be able to teach them why they might want death benefit. What are the multiple different reasons why individuals or businesses might want life insurance? I think is it safe to say we can convince people, or, you know, how does Steve Dunbar put it? He puts it down, he used a term the other day, conversational persuasion. Okay, I kind of use that, navigating a conversation, but Steve Dunbar used that term. Conversational persuasion is that exercise of being able to show people through a conversation, okay, how in this case, cash value buildup of a variable universal life insurance policy is a pretty darn good thing. Can you convince somebody of that? Yes? No? Right? You can convince somebody of that. Okay. The other thing you got to convince them of, okay, are all the different reasons on this timeline as to why they should have life insurance. So let's just brainstorm from it. What are the common reasons why some people buy life insurance? And how would you refer to that?
Debt.
What's that?
Debt.
Okay. You want to pay off your debt. How would you word that to a potential client?
Should something happen to you tomorrow, would you want to leave your wife free and clear of any debt?
Yeah? Does everyone agree that that's a pretty good way to do? What's the only thing he could have said, the only way he could have said that better?
Your spouse.
Well, even better than that, their name. Just, you know what I mean? In the event, Jonathan, that something were to happen to you, would you want to be sure that you had enough insurance in place to leave Maureen and the children, Nick and Steph, free and clear of any debt that you've incurred? Yes or no? So pay off the debt, right? What else? What are the other reasons why people want life insurance? Why should other people want life insurance? Anything.
Education.
Good plan.
Okay, college. A death benefit or a living benefit?
Either one.
It's either or, but we're going to talk just about the death benefit, right? Okay? So make sure that, you kind of, we're just talking about the reasons why they want the life insurance, not the cash value side, okay? So college planning, it's a great vehicle. In the event you're the goose that lays the golden egg. Your college plan, you're socking away $1,000 a month to be able to pay for your children's college. What happens if that $1,000 a month of an investment stops because you no longer have that same earning capacity because you're no longer here? What happens? Is that college going to be fully funded? Well, if you tie it with life insurance, it will be. What are the other, real quick, what are the other reasons?
Income replacement.
Okay, income replacement. What else? You got to be able to just see it real quick and just, what else?
Final expenses.
Okay, final expenses. How do you explain that, by the way? You have fun with it,
How many friends do you have?
You're Irish, right?
A little bit.
So if I'm talking to an Irishman, I might say something to the effect that, final expenses, funeral costs, burial. As an Irish person, that means 3 days of open bar with all your friends. That could be very expensive. You joke, but that's the point you want to make. Okay, what else?
legacy planning.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it could be estate taxes or leaving a gift to the children or grandchildren.
Okay, and so get real, I mean, estate taxes is, you know, somewhat of an obvious one. This one here is even more so in play than sometimes estate taxes. So you want to be able to do that. You want to be able to kind of, you know, articulate, when you see that, you know, little crevice of an opportunity to comment about how they can create a legacy. Right? Make sure you kind of see that. When you see that with a potential client, you got to kind of dab around in there and make sure that they really get a good idea about that, how they can do that. What else? Businesses, right? What else? And how would you phrase it? Because you want to get them really thinking about this. So these are a lot of the reasons why an individual might want it. Okay, we'll talk about estate planning was separate. What are the other reasons why somebody might want life insurance?
Businesses, succession planning.
Okay, so succession planning. What do you mean by that?
Having a business structured that if something happens to you, the business will be able to run should something happen.
So the second you see that, the second you see a small business owner, you should ask them, do you have succession planning in place? What happens if something happens to you? Right, what happens? What else?
Key man insurance,
Key man insurance?
buy-sell agreement.
Buy-sell agreements? How would you explain a key man insurance policy to me?
Is there anybody at your company that would be devastating if they left? And it works as two ways. It works as a bonus for the
And
person.
rather than saying that, that's perfect. But rather than saying that, I would say, in your business right here, who's your number one most important employee? Because that's an easier, they'll answer that. The other one is a little bit of a setup. They might not answer. Who's your number one most important salesperson, operations manager? Who's your number one person? And then no matter what, once they say it, say, if something were to happen to them, they left or they died, would that affect and have a negative impact on your business? Yes or no? And don't let them articulate too much. Just kind of, you're navigating the conversation. When they say yes, then you present the solution. How would you present that solution? Start with what if. Take it from there.
What if Joe was to pass away tomorrow? How would you replace him? Would you need to hire somebody new? Would you need to train somebody new? Would your business have a down? Would your business have a down 6 months because you don't have your top sales rep here? What's the replacement that we're going to need to put in place to fill that gap? Do we need to train someone, or do we need to fill that gap where you're going to have a down 6 months?
So let's just say something. What if something did happen to Jonathan? Wouldn't it be nice that you had a tax-free influx to the business of $1 million so you could make up for the lost sales and take the time to retool and to retrain and to get somebody else up? Or wouldn't it be nice if Jonathan left to go to the competitors and he's your number one salesperson, would that affect your business? Wouldn't it be nice to tie him in here to know that he has incentives to want to stay, at least for the next 5 or 10 years, depending on your time horizon? What if we can do this? What if we can orchestrate something where you can put the money in, okay? You don't have to use everybody, though. You don't have to, kind of like a pension, but you don't have to contribute to everybody. What if we could just put money in earmark it for Jonathan? What if we could let that money grow tax deferred? What if you, as the business owner, owned it, and it would show up as an asset on your balance sheet? What if you, as the business owner, had that for liquidity purposes if you really needed it, but you knew if something happened to him, you, as the business owner, would get a $1 million tax-free benefit to make up for the loss of such a valued employee, but you could also dangle the carrot for the next 10 years and show him how that cash value accumulation, pull out an illustration, say in the 10th year, 15th year, would be worth $400,000. And you can give that to him. And you know what you can do when you give him that $400,000? You can tax deduct it at the corporate level. Right, Kenny? Why can't he? I'm giving you a life insurance policy that's worth $400,000. It's considered compensation. That's $400,000 of compensation that I'm giving you. So explain it like that, and that business owner is saying, now what? Wow, why wouldn't I do that? And even, he doesn't understand, I shouldn't say that. it just sounds so much easier. They, when the business, the business can make this $10,000 contribution. Now it's just the business is paying it. It's not, he's not paying it. It's so much easier for them to justify in the business to be able to come up with $10,000 than for him after the business, after he pays his taxes, to come up with $10,000. You're not necessarily saying it's tax deductible, but you are saying the business can pay taxes on it. Oh, I'm sorry, you are saying the business can pay for it. All right, so you got to know all these reasons, and you got to be real. This is the most important part right here. You got to be so creative when you're talking to somebody. If it's an individual, it's college. If it's pension max, it's mortgage protection. Right? What did we miss here? Pension max. Equalizing inheritance, replacement of the breadwinner. We said that. Charitable gifting, supplemental retirement funds, but that's more the cash value side of it. Pay off your mortgage and other debt, self-completing college plan, key man insurance, business transfer, estate taxes, creating an estate, okay? Here's an interesting one, okay? Take somebody, I'll use myself as an example. This is where Ducor a few years ago convinced me to buy, more insurance. What happened in 2008? Yeah, the market tanked to what capacity?
40%.
40% roughly. So that's safe to say that people's portfolio reduced by 40%. Okay? You know what that inspired me to do?
40% more life insurance.
I bought more life insurance. Not, but not necessarily for that reason, but yes, that's sort of the concept. But I bought more life insurance because I said ideally, I got less to use for retirement. Even if it grows and I don't retire until 2018 or whatever, I've got less to have for retirement than I would have if the market didn't correct. And by golly, I worked pretty darn hard for my money. I want to spend every bit of it. But I also want to leave something to the kids. So I basically just went out and bought more life insurance just for the sole purposes of knowing I could do what?
Spend your money.
Spend all my money. That's it. And there's a lot of people who will do that out there, that they want to do both. Who do you know who's successful, who's made a lot of money? Would they want to leave their family some of that too? Yes. But wouldn't they want to, and certain people, unless you're talking, $100 million, some people want to be able to spend it all and give as much of it as away as they can. So use that. You got to be creative in creating why people would want this. Okay, the last thing I want to do, or one of the other things I want to do, is make sure you can explain. Life insurance can be somewhat complicated to the consumer. So what you've got to be able to do is explain to them, how it really works. Let me see if I have, let's use, has anybody ever done like the corridor discussion? Do you know what I say when I say the corridor discussion?
Talking about a net?
What's that? Yeah, it's kind of, a MEC is a part of it. Here's what it is. I'm going to do 2 quickies here that you can use. I just want to reference the illustration that Chris ran for me, so I can use this as an example. Okay. So here's how life insurance works. Okay, here's how a variable life insurance works. Okay? This represents money, this represents time. Okay? If you have a $500,000 death benefit, okay, it's going to go like this under something that we call, option A. And by the way, which way builds up cash better, option A or option B?
Depends
Depends on what?
on how much they're putting in, if they're overfunding it, and to what level.
Okay. More times than not.
Option B, changing to option A will usually work better.
Okay. Why?
Because you can put in more in the corridor discussion that you're.
Okay. So that might be too complicated for the client.
Yeah.
But you're right. I just want to. So explain. This is how your life insurance works. When you start putting money into a variable universal life insurance contract, all it is, it's a death benefit. Call it a term insurance with mutual funds. And depending on the performance of mutual funds over time, that cash is going to go like this. Okay, it's going to increase, ideally, depending on your investments. And you're going to reach a point in time, okay, where your death benefit is going to be forced to go upward because your cash value is still going upward. And here's what the IRS says. The IRS says you can put your money into this account, with certain limitations. You can let it grow tax deferred. You can even take it out tax free, but there's a couple of catches. One of the catches is that there has to be a little corridor here that exists between your cash value and your death benefit. If your cash value ever exceeded that death benefit, by definition, it's no longer considered life insurance. The reason why this is a good conversation to have with people is because they know that it's, otherwise they'll think it's too good to be true. You got to tell them all the downsides of this. And also, when they see their illustration, if you ran an option A and you started putting in cash, what would happen to their death benefit?
It increase.
It would increase. How have you explained it? People have often wondered, well, how come my death benefit is $570 versus $500,000? They will wonder that. You should explain that before they don't understand it. Okay. The other thing you should be able to do. Okay. This is probably the simplest way to explain this is to go through. Okay. If I were to look at an illustration, the client needs to know exactly how the VUL works. I didn't make a copy of this. Let's see. What am I looking at, Chris? The sales ledger. I use this page right here. All right, so I'm going to look at an illustration where there's $1 million of death benefit, and 20 years he's putting in $15,000. Okay, and in year number 19 he's got $459,000. Explain it to them this way: $459,963 is the cash value in this contract, and Chris ran this at like 6.5%. Okay, so this is year 19. In year 20. Okay, that cash value is $503,894. Okay, explain to the client how it goes from here to here and point out how they don't pay taxes on that gain. In other words, say to the client, well, if you take 459, I'm going to do this over here. Let's put it. It ends up in year 20, 503,894. Here's what you want to try to do here. You want to try to explain to a client, how does this contract really work? Let's take a look at how it really, let's go from year 19 to year 20, or year 23 to year 25, or year 17 to 18, whatever years you decide, okay? 19 to year 20, okay? Under this example, one thing we know that happened is what? He put in $15,000 of additional contribution, okay? So that's a plus. We know roughly that the mortality administrative charges associated with this contract were approximately $2,000. How did I know that? Of the $15,000 that you put in, okay, $2,000 goes towards the $1 million of insurance, mortality, administrative expenses, etc. How do I know that? I looked it up. Okay? All right, so now this comes out to $472,963 times 1.065%, which is what Chris ran that at. Okay? And that comes out to that number right there. And then you say to the prospect, okay? So when your account grew from 459 to 503, part of it was what? The contribution. The other part of it was the interest, right? The interest of roughly how much? $32,000, right? It's 6.5%. Did you get a 1099 for that last year?
No 1099.
Right? And make sure that they know what, and say, that's what I'm talking about. You'll never get a 1099 for this. But you got to be able to show them 1 year. I wouldn't go to year 1, although you could. It's just not that, go to year 10, 15, 20, and just say, hey, look at this right here. Your cash value went from $459,000 to $503,000. Do you wonder how that happened? It's pretty simple. You put in some premium, you take out the mortality administrative charges, the net earns interest, and that's what you got. And you should be able to come up with that. You should be able to come up with it in year 1, year 10, year 15, year 20. You should be able to explain to them how this works and then summarize it by saying, basically, all this is, okay, is a portfolio of mutual funds that have a variable investment return, okay? You're not going to get a 1099 on it. Why?
It's tax
Tax
deferred.
deferred.
because it's tax deferred, okay? And when you take the money out, can you take it out without paying taxes on it? Why?
Because of the tax free
Because the IRS
withdrawals.
said-
You say, because why though? What is the, because why?
Because it's
That's
a
good.
net zero cost loan.
Right? But why? What is this product? Because it has this component or umbrella of life insurance. That's all. And if you don't have that component in there, okay, you still might be able to get something that's tax deferred, but you're not going to get it that comes out tax free. You got to basically say to them, if you don't want the life insurance, you can't get the tax free withdrawals.
Well, you just brought up a good point. So I have two questions. So when you're talking about, let's say, the optimizer as a 10-year surrender, at all in your presentation, do you talk about, first of all, if you cash it out, this is the only way there can ever be, a tax consequence? And then my other question is, let's say in the first 10 years, you never brought up if I wanted to borrow and there's a loan interest rate of 1% or whatever it may be. Does that come up in conversation?
Yeah. Now this is, and that would be the next series of drilling down into this a little bit deeper. If somebody says to you, how can you take your money out of this tax free? Then you're going to have a conversation of what? Loans. Okay. Well, basically, how does this really work? By the way, if you had $459,000, you wanted to take out, $200,000. Okay, and you put in at this point $100,000. Does the $100,000, Mr. Prospect? How would you get the first $100,000 out of this contract?
Withdrawal premium.
Withdrawal of your premium, also known as your
Basis.
basis. How would you get the other $100,000 out?
Loan.
Net loan.
You can take it out with a loan. Because it's a loan, and how does it really work now? Is the loan interest rate guaranteed? The spread is guaranteed. Just so that you know. The loan interest rate that we're going to charge Jonathan for taking out his $100,000, that's not guaranteed. Right now, I think it's 3%, right? And with the crediting rate is 2%, right?
For the first 10 years.
For the first 10 years, and then after that, it's 0, okay? But why, so Mr. Prospect, basically what happens is that under today's interest rates, okay, that $100,000, in the first 10 years, if you take that money out, we're going to charge you, and we have to charge you something. We're going to charge you 3%, but we're going to credit you 2%. The net cost of that is 1%. Would you rather pay 1% on a principal amount of $100,000, which amounts to be how much?
$1,000.
$1,000. Or would you rather pay 33% on that $100,000? I'm not sure. You just tell me. What would you rather do? Okay? Now, after that, it's 0. But the reason why that you guys should know this is use it for your advantage. The reason why that interest rate that we have to charge them is not guaranteed is because the IRS. The IRS says you have to charge them a fair and reasonable interest rate on your money. A market value. So if interest rates go up next year, the prime, let's just say the 10-year treasury goes up 300 basis points. Good chance that this $100,000 loan is not going to be for 3% anymore. It's probably going to be for what?
4%.
Well, let's just say, let's just say in ratio, if it goes up, let's just say it's going to be up to 6%. If it's 3% now, it goes up, let's just say it's going to be 6%. But what's our crediting rate going to be?
First 10 years, 5%.
5%. Is that guaranteed?
The net.
Is it guaranteed in the contract that says the first, it is guaranteed in the contract that
First
says,
page of the illustration.
what's that?
It's on the first.
It is. It says that the spread is guaranteed, but the interest rate's not. So I think that's a real big plus, because if people think that it sounds too good to be true, how can you just, charge? Then you got to explain, well, here's how it really works. The IRS says this, Jonathan, okay? You can put your money into one of these contracts. There's certain limitations as to how much you can put into it based on death benefit, okay? You can let your money grow tax deferred. It's liquid, but you can even take it out without paying taxes by first taking out your basis, also known as your cumulative premium, and then after that, switching it over to loans. We, though, as a company, AXA, is required by the IRS to charge you, quote-unquote, fair and reasonable interest rates on your money. Or else it won't be a loan. Okay? Then it's just some way of tax avoidance scheme. So we have to change, at times, maybe the interest rate we charge you, but we guarantee you, in the first 10 years, that we're going to credit you 1% less than what we charge you, so that your net interest that you pay is always going to be in the first 10 years, 1%, and every year thereafter it's going to be 0, because we're going to charge you, because we can credit you all. The IRS doesn't say we can't credit you as, customer loyalty credits, if you will. We can credit your account as much as we want. So I think that's a real strong point that you make with a prospect, because then they start looking at this, wow, this is no tax avoidance scheme, this is the real deal. And everything like I just described, you can find, if you ever decide to read it, in 7702. Okay? All right. I'll end this where I started, and that is, I would highly encourage you, I don't care who you're talking to, no matter how advanced that they might be, to talk to somebody about using the characteristics of a great investment, and then take it down these paths as you see fit. Start with those first, 6 bullet items, and then decide how much they need to know. Can you run an illustration that shows where every single dollar is going through the calculator pages or whatever the case might be?
Also, that into benefits.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to do, but I would suggest that rather than doing that, I would go through it, know how to do it on a piece of paper, and be able to explain it. If the client understands how it works, they'll be more apt to buy it. If you're just showing them an illustration and kind of like, and they're thinking, how does this work? They don't understand it, they're not going to buy it. My best sales over the years came from, unfortunately, I had to detail out the sales, and the more detail I got, the better, the larger the sales were. And I had to always remind them by saying this. So in summary, what I want you to remember is that every single dollar, and Gary used to call me, a client of mine, Gary used to call me all the time, and say, Jim, tell me again why I should drop $15,000 into this contract right now. Tell me again why. Because every year I tell him to, overfund it to whatever the limitations were, right? I said, because Gary, every dollar that you put in there, above and beyond the little bit that's going to go to the mortality and administrative charges, is just pure, unadulterated, tax-deferred mutual funds known as separate accounts. And because you have given part of that into a life insurance contract, and it's protected by that umbrella, it gives you liquidity and tax-free distribution. But remember, Gary, there's a catch. The catch is you can't put in $20,000. You can only put in $15,000. Should you want to put in $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000, we'd have to do something different. That is what, Gary? Increase the coverage. And so Gary's, over the years, as he, it started off at $250, it went to $5, it went to $750, and now it's at $1.5. Over the years. Now you can't do that anymore. Now what do you got to do? Sell another one, right? That's unfortunate, but it is what it is. All right?